Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With us today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you.
Happy Thursday, Dr. Paul. How are you today?
Very well, thank you.
We almost look like twins today.
Oh, yeah, I'm glad I called you on that.
Our fashion designer has helped us out quite a bit today.
Why don't we get more casual sometime? What is that, Friday? It's Saturday?
Casual Fridays?
Did I permit that in Washington ever?
No.
I don't know. I can't remember. That's a long time ago.
We snuck it when you weren't there. We snuck some casual
Friday,
clothes.
if I'd gone already back to Texas.
That's right. You were already back.
Okay, I want to start off with a change in the direction of the CDC.
Yes.
And it's different, and some people could argue, say, well, they're coming to their senses. They've heard about our criticism, and they're straightening up their act. Or it could be just a lot of just mischief. Maybe they're looking for more money. Maybe they're looking for, pretense that this is going to continue for a long time. But the CDC director orders the agencies to be overhauled.
Yeah.
And that'll probably cost $1 million or so.
No, that's chump change.
Yeah. But the big thing is the director admitted a flawed COVID-19 response. I can't believe that. What you mean they were messing things up? But of course, we could argue and say, well, now they've come around to agreeing with us. But isn't it tragic that they probably knew exactly what they're doing, but politically and monetarily or whatever, they feel it's necessary to come forth now and sneak it in and pretend that's not a big deal. Oh yeah, we made a mistake or two, and not ever willing to look at the complications, the money spent, the harm done to people, with all that lockdown. What's going to happen to a generation or two of young people, and all the things, the educational system, and the medical system, so much disruption. So they just say, well, we were a little slow. We want to make sure they get the information out sooner.
Yeah.
And my first response was to you. I said, yeah, get it out sooner. The question is, what are they going to send us? Are they going to send us propaganda?
Yeah.
Or are they going to send us the true figures? But you spent a lot of time helping for the program, digging out those figures. Remember, every week you'd come up and try to figure out exactly what the truth is. And it was,
Yeah.
But now they're saying that we want to serve the public, and of course the whole process of the CDC, it's probably one of the one terribly damaging agency of government.
Yeah.
And it's ongoing. So what they're doing is probably to cover up, as if nothing else, or pretend that they're reformed. But they're not going to come forth and describe to us where they messed up and what we shouldn't have done. I don't think there's going to be a lot of confession like that.
No, it's a classic, like you always say, it's a classic example of when a government agency completely botches something. It's not because we gave you bad information or we're incompetent. It's just because we didn't have enough money. It's like the 9/11 Commission. Remember, They had this millions and millions of dollars to study why they attacked us, but they never asked Ron Paul, well, why did they attack us, right? It was always, we don't have enough money. Let's put up the first clip, because we're talking about an article in Politico today. CDC director orders agency overhaul, admitting flawed COVID-19 response. And from that, you would wonder, like, was it because they kept flip-flopping? And here's the Walensky, by the way, with a couple masks on. She probably should put a couple more on. But was it because we told you to do stuff that we told you the next week you shouldn't do? No, it was simply because they didn't have enough money. And I think this is what precipitated. This is from the Politico article. In March 2020, 79% of Americans said public health officials, including the CDC, were doing a good job in responding to the pandemic. But by May of 2022, only 52% of Americans thought so. This is according to the Pew Research Center. So Americans lost faith in the CDC. So looking at the writing on the wall, they didn't say, well, we should probably get better and stop being so dumb. They said, no, we need some more money so that we can appear to be smarter than we actually are.
It's sort of ingrained in the system because, even in monetary problems, when you have inflation of the money supply and prices go up, the answer is, we don't have enough money. We don't have enough. So having too much in the wrong way and circulating it with fiat money, that's the problem. But when they say more, they created the problem, so to treat the problem, you do more of what caused the problem. So it's sort of like what's going on here. They create their problems, and then they decide that they have to have more money because the damage done to this country was, and a lot of people will probably challenge me on this, it's been more the lockdown. When I think of long-term understanding of what liberty is all about and of what finances is all about, and really down to the medical, there's so much damage to the science of medicine. This whole idea that they could cancel natural immunity, that is astounding on how much influence they had.
The lockdown, and also how many people are now dying because they were forced to take a shot. That's a pretty bad shot. Well, let's have a little bit of a reminder. Let's go back a little bit in history, turn on our time machines, because if you remember, Rochelle Walensky, she's the one who's now reforming the CDC. She's the one who told us over and over, take the shots, 100% effective. You'll never get COVID. Everything's going to be great. Let's just remind ourselves of what she said a little bit later. Let's watch that whole clip of her and Wolf Blitzer. We've seen it before, but we should watch it again. When she comes begging for more money, we should play this video to her and ask her to explain it.
But what about all the fully vaccinated people who get the breakthrough infection? Can they pass it on? Could they pass it on to their children? Could they pass the virus on to older people, especially more vulnerable people with underlying health conditions?
And that's exactly the point that we made in our guidance. So yes, they can with the Delta variant, and that was the reason that we changed our guidance last Tuesday. Our vaccines are working exceptionally well. They continue to work well for Delta with regard to severe illness and death. They prevent it, but what they can't do anymore is prevent transmission.
So we should remember her incompetence. What these shots what these vaccines can no longer do is prevent against infection or transmission. I mean,
boy, that's new news, isn't
you're
it?
fired. You're fired. So we should remember how incompetent the whole system was.
Well, I think it's safe. It's a radical idea, but my idea would be that the principle of the bureaucracy of a government to do anything. And that was one of the great statements of Mises. He wrote a whole book on the bureaucracy, and how it's so more harm than good. If you do one thing, you create new problems. Certainly, everything that they did with COVID and spending the money and the vaccines and the booster shots, they created more problems. And now they're down to the point where they admit, they're not supposed to stop the disease. They won't keep you immune. But then there's still people obsessed with, wearing their mask and getting their shots. And the government still, they just not too many months ago bought up a whole lot of vaccines in preparation to inoculate everybody under 5 years of age. So it's really tragic that the process is wrong. There's still a lot to be said to champion the cause of free enterprise and free markets, individual liberty, letting individuals make up their mind. Imperfect, but it's going to be a lot better for a doctor and a patient to decide which way to go on treatment rather than listening to the government. A lot of people have more faith in government because, and yet at the same time, it's come around. I think we're at a point now where they can issue this thing that we're going to do a reversal on this. Back when they should have done it about 2 years ago, they weren't going to talk about it. But they are not going to go away. They're not going to give up the principle of bureaucracy, using a bureaucrat to make decisions that should be made in the marketplace.
Well, just in case our viewers might think we're just being cynical, saying that this review is only about more money, let's take a little bit of a deeper dive into the Politico article. Let's put up that next clip. This is from that Politico article about the CDC's reform. If we can get that one up there. The CDC restructuring follows 2 reviews conducted in recent months. The reviews concluded that, quote, the traditional scientific and communication processes were not adequate to effectively respond to a crisis this size. They're setting it up. Let's do the next one. They're setting it up There is consensus within the CDC that it needs to make some changes on how it communicates and how it operates to be faster, nimbler, to use more plain spoken language. And then the next one, here is the laugh line, here's the punchline, here's what it's all about. Walensky has repeatedly pointed out that the agency was underfunded before the pandemic started. So it's not a matter of them telling you something different every week, Dr. Paul, and saying things that were blatantly not true, which is that the vax works. No, they just didn't have enough of our money.
Well, likely one of these days, Fauci's going to have to go. And then he will get, good retirement benefit. So they have to be prepared because he's the highest paid person that ever worked in the government. So he's going to retire and he's going to have the biggest bonus ever. So we better provide him because we don't want the supporters of Fauci, rebelling against us. But he went out and talked to his friends right out in Seattle. That's where his friends are. And is that true that there were people that booed him?
They should be in jail. You should never boo such a national hero.
They're canceled. You can't ever come back to a baseball game.
It's like booing Hank Aaron.
Right.
Well, as usual, our friend Jeff Tucker, who's been so great for so long on the COVID thing, he has a great piece in the Brandstone Institute today. And let's put that up because he nails it. We should just read his article and save us some time. Put up this next one. It's great. Thus, does it make sense that the present overlords of the agency have admitted at least partially to having made some errors? The question is, what were those errors? Exactly, Jeff. Quote, from the latest news concerning some impending shakeup, I see no evidence of any serious rethinking of the crazed and cockamamie lockdown orders it issued from March 2020 onward. Not even preposterous mandates like plexiglass at retail counters, 2 years of school closures, 6 feet of distance, one-way grocery aisles, band members in bubbles, mask mandates, and limits on how many people you can have in your home have prompted remorse. Instead, every indication is the CDC believes the real problem was that it did not have a high enough budget and enough power. Exactly.
I think they could start. One thing, just be a one sweep because it's only one issue. Remove immunity from the drug companies because that is the basic motivation for them to totally not care about it. And now the statistics are coming out, it's pouring out about how many people have suffered, and we really don't know that yet. We suspected it, we always suspected it.
Yeah.
It's leaking out now, and it's scary. And then when they started talking about, what was the report last week? It was on the teenagers that had the myocarditis, and it was highest time ever.
Huge.
And they're just starting to contact. How do they know what's going to, that's 2 years. And of course, there's people who died suddenly, and it was short. Quickly, they had reactions. But how do they know what will happen to people 5 years from now? And it lingers, and the body doesn't heal. They always hope that the body will heal from natural causes, and a lot of times it does. But in this case, the only hope that people have right now is they're hoping the body of the people who have been injected with all this will finally heal. And I imagine, I'd have to say, probably the majority will make it. But that's not an excuse. If even 5% of the people, or percentage-wise, you're talking about millions of people.
Yeah.
Because just look at how they use those drugs around the world. But the recognition that these vaccines and booster shots could do harm is that many other countries now are compensating the people who have suffered from government mandates. And I don't think our government has touched on that because, the pharmaceutical companies are too powerful.
Yeah. Well, even just what we've said so far, if we had said this a year ago, we literally would be canceled. We could be canceled from some of our social media today for saying it. But it tells you so much about how the social media and the mainstream media, but especially the social media, has conspired with government to silence people that are questioning things. Remember Alex Berenson, who won his lawsuit against Twitter, he was kicked off of Twitter for just saying, these are not vaccines. If they don't prevent you from getting it or spreading it, you can't call them vaccines. Maybe they help some people, but they're not vaccines. So that says a lot about the role of the social media in clamping down on dissent. And dissent is healthy. We always criticize other countries for not having a full and vibrant media, where in fact we have a log in our own eyes.
Right.
But you know, this next segment, I have to say, I hesitate to do it because I find it so depressing. But our good friend Jordan Schachtel, who's done also terrific work for a couple of years, and I recommend everyone to read and subscribe to the Dossier, which is his Substack. Put up this next one. This is something I think we're going to revisit this, Dr. Paul, in the future because there's going to be more about it. But this is his latest piece, Military Whistleblowers. The DoD's legally dubious mRNA mandate has harmed readiness and produced widespread injuries. Jordan Schachtel went and talked to some military people who talked about the injuries that they've received by being forced to take this shot against their will. They were told you can't take a religious exemption, it's going to be automatically refused. And so a lot of them did take it. We know some people who did not take it and had to leave the military, but a lot of people did. But now it's coming out how much harm has been done.
Now, this is a real tragedy. To me, just the idea that we have to talk about this, have we gotten that far that it's a debatable issue?
Yeah.
Because not too long ago, when I was just getting into medicine, the rules were so different. You didn't treat children without a parent there or giving you permission to even put a single stitch in. You just go, and then the theory was the parents were responsible, but also sometimes there's a reaction, you know, for a pain shot, you know, to numb up a skin, and if the child dies, I mean, it becomes a complicated problem. But that's not the case now because you don't get permission now. The separation is such that the children can get these shots. These children can get the sex transfer without the parental control, and of course get abortions without parental notification, and on. But it is a reflection of the type of society. We can't say that everybody in Washington that has an office there and they're a politician or a bureaucrat. It has to go back to this social media and the atmosphere of the people and what is tolerated. But fortunately, I keep saying, the toleration of this nonsense eventually ends, and I think we witnessed that in the lockdown. You know, that as time went on, the parents got angrier and they exerted themselves, but there's going to be a bit of lingering on some of these regulations. You know, they keep them on the books. My analogy was, if they really don't want to ever draft anybody to send them off to war, why don't they get rid of draft registration?
Yeah.
Oh, well, we might need it someday. So the principle is still there, and that's what's happening here. The principle of the government involvement is there, and it's a shame that we even have to say, well, why did they do this, and how can we control this? And maybe we can, you know, get permission faster or something like that.
Well, sadly, many conservatives are in love with the state. They just want to control. They think they can use the state for their own good ends. Unfortunately, they're not going to be dissuaded. However, I think just like with the convincing middle America that spending $1 trillion on the military hurts their budgets and doesn't help America, I think if you talk to conservatives about how this attack on the military with the vaccines is harming the readiness of our troops, and we do need a military. We need to defend this country, which we don't do, and what we have done, unfortunately, what they have done, not we didn't do it, is harm our military and make us more vulnerable. Maybe Mexico will invade us. Well, they're already doing that, but maybe someone else will invade us next week. But let's look up, this is just one of dozens of these situations that Schachtel has put up. This is just one case. U.S. Air Force reservist, female in her 30s, discouraged by her commander to seek a religious accommodation for the negative effect it will have on her career, and told, quote, not being vaccinated is not conducive to military service. 72 hours after vaccination, she developed visual distortions and vertigo. Sent to the ER and initially diagnosed with vertical, I can't even pronounce it, which drove a requirement for a CT scan. The CT scan revealed she suffered from 4 different strokes after her shot. Maybe it's a coincidence, but Jordan has dozens of these on his site. Military whistleblowers are coming forth and saying how harmed they were from being forced to take the shot.
And back to the liability, you know that the drug companies are never going to pay because the government under those conditions were Republicans and Democrats who passed all these laws, and both sides would be sympathetic to the corporatism that exists. So guess who gets the bill? It's the middle class again, just like they get the bill for, paying for these deficits and all, and the inflation, and even if a war breaks out, it's the middle class and poor people that suffer the most on this. And yet, how much motivation is there to sell their product, which is government intervention? Oh yeah, but this is shifting. It is. The Republicans don't care about poor people. If you're a libertarian, you're so cold-hearted. But I keep thinking, yes, but in a libertarian society, there's at least something to talk about. You have stuff available. Once you have the government doing it, you end up with poverty because you don't have the streets cleaned, you don't have the police around, and people have trouble making it, and then you have all this regulations with medical care, and you end up with a mess. And then they still think that the people generally, there's still a majority of people out there that believe that it's a right, it's a right to get this, and that they should be taken care of, and if they're not, then we'll vote you out of office. But I think that attitude is it wouldn't be fair to say that attitude is getting worse at the moment. I think people are questioning that because they're starting to realize the government's broke.
Well, the military may have killed a bunch of people and harmed a bunch of others with their stupid shot mandates, but Dr. Paul, I'm happy to report at least they have the priorities in order. Let's put up that last clip, which is also from Jordan Schachtel. The military has its priorities in order. Combat ready, the Pentagon to host transgender and non-binary gender inclusion and pronoun usage workshop. So you may have your heart blown up by a shot, but at least you can talk about what your gender identity is, Dr. Paul. So we're happy about that. I'm going to close out by just saying thank you to Rumble. We've been on Rumble for a few weeks now. They featured us in their featured live shows for the past few days since we've started, and it's really helped our numbers. At the time when we joined, we were worried. We didn't know what would happen to our numbers, but we haven't suffered. In fact, they've been higher. Rumble has thus far been a great partner to us, I think. And I just have to say personally, it's nice to work with a group of people that want us to succeed rather than other social media that are doing their best to silence us. So a big thank you to them.
The requirement for this to work is that both sides have to be successful and happy. So they have to benefit, we have to benefit, and that's a lot easier to keep it going. And that's, of course, all contracts and bringing people together. It has to be voluntary on both sides. But once you get involved with the government, they become this third party, and they have to pick a side. And then within the sides, they have to pick certain people. Who's going to run this group? And it becomes just a horrible political football. And all of a sudden, we end up with a government that is just so powerful, and everything, and the lockdown and the COVID thing is such a demonstration of how quickly it can get out of control. It got out of control. It's being restrained a little bit, and we mentioned here cautiously that even CDC has to maybe consider changing their ways. As long as you send them more money, that's it. But no, I think that the understanding of where we are on the vaccines and COVID, way ahead of two and a half years ago and 3 years ago. And I think that in spite of the fact that we don't share the foreign policy of a lot of people who have concern. Of course, we share the concern for the people, you know, and all. So it's, but that could be one big attention getter. It just like the kids became the attention getter to the parents and woke up some of the people in a good sort of way. They wake up and say, "Hey, what are they doing?" And then they went to those libraries. They were really off limits there. Reading the stuff that they were letting their kids read. I mean, what kind of parent? Spying on their kids and their teachers. Gee, that's horrible. But we'll take care of that. So
I'm all done,
You're
Dr.
all
Paul.
done. Well, we want to say a big thank you to our viewing audience today, and I'm glad things are moving along. We're looking forward to a lot of you at our conference coming up soon. Please come back to the Liberty Report soon.